Hey, welcome to our term project for CS370. My name is Will Dackness. I worked with Kenny Hotra and Daniel Ives to make this project happen. The hardware that we used for this project included a Raspberry Pi 4 Model B. We also used a Logitech USB camera, and we used a Wi-Fi router that was hooked up to the Raspberry Pi through an Ethernet cable. The Raspberry Pi is assigned a static IP address on the network, so we never have to change the IP address in our code. This allows us to confidently run the program on boot without having to connect a display or SSH to make sure everything is set up correct before we start. This setup would work fine with your typical home Wi-Fi router, but to ensure that we have fast and consistent communication, we're using a dedicated one for our demo. We implemented two shared libraries into our project, the first being MediaPipe. This is a Google-made AI computer vision library that we use for our hand tracking. The second shared library that we used was called PyInput. We use this library to simulate keyboard input depending on the hand signal that was detected on our camera.
So we got the Wi-Fi router plugged into my computer and the Raspberry Pi through Ethernet cables. There's also the Logitech webcam plugged in with USB. To run the hand tracking, all we need to do is plug in the Pi. This takes about 30 to 40 seconds to boot up. While we wait, we can open up client.py on my computer and hit run. The code attempts to connect to the Raspberry Pi via network socket. If it fails, it retries every 5 seconds until a connection is made. Looks like the Pi is ready to go. You can see the camera light turn on. We can play or pause by showing it an open hand. And we can make a fist in order to mute. You can control app volume with thumbs up and thumbs down. This actually just presses control up and control down, which works with YouTube and Spotify. By pointing right and left, you can go to the next song and previous song. You can control system volume by pointing with your index finger up and down. The code's currently set up to increase the volume on Windows anyway by 10 each time. And be careful not to offend the Raspberry Pi because it will just close whatever window you have open.
For our code, we decided to use Python 3. This is because of its ease of use and the availability of many libraries and functions useful for our program. Due to the use of many new features such as the match case, this program only works on versions 3.10 and above. The Raspberry Pi runs the PyGestorController.py program. This program establishes socket communication over the network. Once a connection to the client is made, the camera is turned on. For each frame, the camera will detect any hands and run it through the gesture detector. Once the same gesture has appeared for enough frames, the gesture will be sent over the socket as a simple stringed message. The client computer will use the client.py program. This program makes a connection to the Raspberry Pi using sockets. Once a connection to the server has been established, the program will listen for gestures. Once the program receives a gesture message, it will trigger a key press on the client computer using the PyInput library. This program is set up to be customizable so that it can be adapted to any website or application.